So, it's January 2022. It's 15 days in. And there's already scandal with the royals, there's scandal with the government. It just seems like it's January 2020 all over again. And the last 2 years haven't happened. You're listening to Around the World Today, Series 5, Episode 2.
Podcast brought to you by Real Terrier Radio.
Around the world on the internet, this is Real Terrier Radio.
So, welcome to the episode, and it's January 2022. Now, welcome, Happy New Year. There has been an episode in front, and there is two episodes scheduled after. So the next time I'm going to talk to you to tell you about the plans for this series will not be until the next episode. So let's tell you what they are. In this episode, I'm going to launch a topic. Well, actually, this one should have come before the last one. There should be 3 straight topics. The topic we're looking at is air travel. And not only air travel, it's transport in general, actually, and innovation into transport, and we're looking at air travel. Join me on Wednesday for this podcast when it drops for number 2. But number 1, you can listen to a Series 5, Episode 1, Airlines, it's entitled. But this episode is January 2021, where we look at the news, and we look about what's been going on around our awesome world, shall we say, or creation, and a couple of stories. First, who would have thought the Prime Minister's been having parties? Well, I would have, considering now we're hearing about parties the day before Prince Philip's funeral. We're hearing parties a year before that, in May 2020, in the height of the first lockdown. We're also hearing about civil servants having parties. We were hearing about parties, if you remember, in the December 2020 episode, 2021 episode, and I'm sorry, I keep forgetting it's 2022, and I don't know why. It's been 15 days. But should we just address the Partygate? These parties not only go against everything that we as citizens who have tried to follow the rules and the guidance, who have suffered great sacrifice. There are citizens out there around the world who have actually, like Her Majesty the Queen, buried a loved one at a graveside on their own with just their priest and their loved one's coffin. There are people who have been isolated from other people around the world. Families have lost and grieved during this pandemic, not only suffering from the signs of COVID, but from other illnesses, from freak accidents to freak acts of God. People have lost loved ones. Service personnel, doctors, nurses, people who work on the front line have been away from families and putting their lives on the line. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in 10 Downing Street, home of the United Kingdom's head minister, home of government HQ, decided that they would restrict these rules on us and inflict them as hard as they can some of the time of when these rules breaks were happening. Police services within the United Kingdom were going around heavy-handedly policing these rules, but they weren't doing it at 10 Downing Street. Now, it's not about a Labour thing or a Conservative thing or anti-Conservative or I'm pro-Labour. This is a generalisation of the behaviour, the utter contempt that has been shown by a select group of people who were responsible and worked within the office of the Prime Minister or of 10 Downing Street, the Cabinet Office, who thought that the rules did not apply to them. Yes, there is one instance so far where the Prime Minister has been positively that he knew about it and attended. He's apologised and gone to Parliament. I wait to pass any kind of, to talk about that, to see if any more comes out, to when the review comes out. But is this review actually going to yield any results? Because basically all it seems to do is start a divide people for the next election, for the next win. There's more scandal in the United Kingdom, as you know, about Prince Andrew. Now, I have a few feelings here. I personally believe that to take a civil case for an act such as rape, exploitation, kidnap, crossing international borders and people smuggling, for there not to be a criminal charge is just hypocrisy at the least. Because to me, all that makes the person is a prostitute who wants their payment. They don't want their justice. They don't want to make sure that this perpetrator never does it again, by making this perpetrator go through the criminal justice system and into jail. No, what they want is money, fame, fortune, sell a book. To me, it doesn't matter if the perpetrator is a prince of the United Kingdom or a lonely person with zero in living in poverty. It doesn't matter to me if the perpetrator is a baron or is a person who works at McDonald's on minimum wage. If you commit a crime, this crime should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law in a criminal court, where criminal charges and evidence are brought forward. These kind of crimes in the American justice system just don't make sense. That someone can commit a crime but not be prosecuted for it criminally, but can sue against it? I don't know. Is it ethical for certain crimes? Yes, I get theft. Do you know what I mean? And I get, if someone steals your car and your insurance don't pay out, they've been prosecuted, so you sue the person. You know? I get that. But surely a criminal case needs to... and a full criminal investigation. Because otherwise, it's just his word against her word. And who does the judge believe? So, the same can be said here about the Prime Minister's parties. We're going to jump back to that topic. Now, the first party happened in the 10th of May 2020. Boris Johnson announced a plan to take the first careful steps out of the lockdown that began in March 2020. But he said that people should continue to obey the rules on social distancing, and to enforce those rules, we will increase the fines for a small minority who break them. Take that word, shall we? Small minority who break them, increase the number of fines. So, if the staff of 10 Downing Street are fined, and the organisation of 10 Downing Street for not following social distancing policies and guidelines, who foots the bill of the fine? Will it be Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party? Or will it be UK Taxpayer PLC? Because it is quite laughable if we as taxpayers have to pay the bill for these parties that we haven't been invited to. A joke, if you are going to listen back to the last episode, and it's talking about British Airways, a joke that I made to my group of friends, was it was easier to get an invite to a Downing Street party than it was to get through to a human being at British Airways. Now, legal restrictions at the time said you could not leave your home without a reasonable excuse, and the government guidance was that you could meet one person outside of your household in an outdoor setting while exercising. If you remember, there were loads of people exercising. Yes, I was one of them. A photo from May 2020 showed the Prime Minister and his staff, and my phone's just fallen on the floor. His Prime Minister and his staff with a bottle of wine and a cheese board in the Downing Street garden. When asked about it, Boris said, those people were at work, talking about work. I don't think I've ever been paid to go to a staff party, a summer party, or even a goodbye party, a Christmas party, a Halloween party. Not even when I worked as staff opening a cinema site. The first, we weren't paid for the staff party. We talked about work, of course, but we still weren't paid for the staff party. 20th of May 2020, about 100 people were invited by email to a socially distanced drinks in the number 10 garden on behalf of the Prime Minister's principal private secretary, Martin Reynolds. Witness told BBC that the PM and his wife were among the 30 people who attended. The Prime Minister confirmed he attended the event, saying he was there for 25 minutes and believed implicitly that it was a work event. Once again, wine, cheese board. The average worker isn't allowed to drink alcohol at work. let alone gets a free cheese board, unless they're on a conference training thing, but they still don't get the alcohol because they're at work. It asks us a bigger systemic question of society in general. Have we become too reliant on alcohol? The Prime Minister announced plans for a significant return to normality in England by Christmas for a targeted local action instead of national lockdowns, but he added that the timetable relied on every one of us staying alert and acting responsibly. Another key word, acting responsibly. Here is the government acting responsibly, of course, telling us how to act as citizens whilst doing the opposite. Now, from public relations, it really doesn't look good. If you were trying to sell Number 10 Downing Street as a business, an ongoing business, you'd have a hard time right now, wouldn't you, with these flaws in its marketing or lack of message. They're not consistent. To follow, there's something called lead by example. Now, I'm not a kind of person who would lead by being overly bossy, even though people do call me bossy. I'm the kind of person who believes that leadership comes from setting an example, by showing, by doing. Now, of course, there is times when a person is in a leadership role where you are called to be a leader. But it's how you lead it. Do you come in and take full control? Or do you come and you show and you offer? And by showing people leadership, by going out, by following the rules even, by being one of them, first among equals, also means, you are one of them and you are following the rules. No one is above the rules. Even Her Majesty the Queen, who technically is above the rules because she is above the law. Legally speaking, in the United Kingdom, when acting as the Queen, she can't actually be prosecuted. So, yes, quite funnily, even she chose to follow the rules and to lead by example. Her son may have not, but she has. Her Majesty has... I have a lot of respect for our Queen right now. There's times when I've been anti-monarchy and times when I have been monarchist. And right now, I have a lot of respect for Her Majesty. She has just had to make a decision that no parent should have to make. She has... And we as the people see it as, oh, it's Prince Andrew. We fail to see, and I was talking about this the other day with my friend Terry Begley, when it came out about the trial and the judge overturning, and we were talking about, is Prince Andrew really going to get a fair trial? And I'm going to talk about that in a bit. Remember, after the case has been heard, because it's a live case, and we kind of don't want to get sued, do we? Even though some media stuff may come from that, but we don't want to get sued. So yes, we were talking about it, and we only see it as the Queen and Prince, their titles. We forget that their relationship is also of mother and son. This would have been a conversation that His Royal Highness, as he was, Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, would have been having with Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. and her other Commonwealth territories. And within these conversations, within all of this, there's a mother, there's a son. Now, these are hard conversations. Imagine these conversations that you're having on your own because you're still grieving for your husband, the love of your life. Then throw into the fact that you're head of state. That's your job. Also throw in the fact that you're 95 years old. And you're about to celebrate your platinum jubilee. The Queen has so much to be thankful for and joyful for this year. I thank God that she made a quick and a decisive decision in dealing with Prince Andrew. What could have not been easy for Her Majesty at all. This is strong leadership. This is leading by example. The Queen saying that even I'm and my family are not above the rules. Meanwhile, the government keeps breaking the rules. The people bringing the rules are the ones failing to actually bring in and follow their own rules. There were two parties held the day before Prince Philip's funeral. One of the events was a leaving party for the Prime Minister's then Director of Communications, James Slack, who has apologised for the event and acknowledged it should have not happened at the time that it did. Boris was not at any of the parties, and we don't actually know if the Prime Minister knew about them. Lockdown restrictions were eased in England, with pubs and restaurants allowed to reopen with outdoor service only. And this was on the 12th of April, 2021. However, working from home continued to be recommended, and socialising indoors with people from other households was not allowed. Meeting others outdoor was limited to groups of 6 people or 2 households, depending on your sensibilities. Do you remember what was going on when all of this was happening? The rules were being broken, but that's fine. We had people saying that the rules in Wales were too tough when case rates were actually lower. We had people in Scotland saying, well, look at England, the rules are too tough. We had people in Northern Ireland saying the same thing. We were being told by English people that we were racist because we didn't want them in our parts of the country, because we were still in lockdown. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom was laughing at every one of them, because his people, the government, the ones who are implementing the policy, and it doesn't matter who is in office, the government were giving this policy to them, but weren't following it. That's not leadership. But we can't keep talking about the government and the royals, because there is more been happening. So 2 years after the airline and the tour operator Thomas Cook became insolvent, a probe has found that the bosses, they've cleared them basically of any wrongdoing in the business becoming non-viable anymore and bust. So the former directors of one of Britain's biggest travel companies are to be formally cleared of wrongdoing by the government's bankruptcy watchdog after a probe lasting more than 2 years. Full details of the Insolvency Service's conclusions were unclear on Wednesday, but one source close to the process said it had decided that there was no basis for further action against the tour operators' bosses. Anything to do with that the government refused to give them a bailout. We covered this and we said goodbye to Thomas Cook in one of our previous episodes. Do go back and listen to it. Thomas Cook was a bastion to the travel industry. It was started by a man named Thomas Cook running train companies and excursions, and then expanded into something that was great. Got a bit crazy in the end, but that's what normally happens when an organisation gets too big for itself. You forget the little people and the messaging. You forget what it was really about. And you just remember the profits. Russia and Ukraine have been... It's been hotting up again. It really has. But, you know. But this is it? Really? There has been a COVID case in the... Ghislaine Maxwell, prosecutors will drop the perjury charges if there's no retrial in the sex trafficking case. Isn't that a bit of a quid pro quo? Are they afraid that the case will fall for a second time? See, this is what I don't get about it. Surely someone should be charged if they have to have a second case. Surely there has been a fault. Yes, she was found guilty. We're still waiting for sentencing and see what's going to happen there. But she was found guilty, and that's a criminal case. I find all of this disdainful. The parties, the royal scandal. I feel that court cases and investigations brought out in the media don't really allow an independent process to gather witness testimony and a fair due process. So we keep hearing from government ministers about the person who is investigating all of these parties within the heart of our government of the United Kingdom. Okay, can any of you listening to this, besides Sir Humphrey Appleby, know any permanent secretary within the government within the last decade, or even in your lifetime? I think she's become a household name. And I think this was done to distract people, to distract her from the fact of what's been coming out. These revelation parties weren't even told to her. They're now being investigated by her. It's an interesting time within government right now. It's an interesting time in the world. Omicron wasn't as infectious as we thought. Well, it's more infectious, but it's less harmful. What's quite great. I've had my third jab as well, and I did this on my own. And for those who have been listening, I have a needle phobia. Well, I did, but I was able to do it on my own this time, and I went and I did it 2 days before Christmas. It was quite and I think I've got full immunity now for the time being. What's quite not really daunting, but you know what I mean. I'm fed up of hearing about anti-vaxxers. I'm fed up of people talking about hate and division. Yes, there is elections coming up. I'm also getting fed up of party politics this year. And I think we're a roundabout way that you can tell. You know, the leader of the opposition in the United Kingdom hasn't been as good as Boris Johnson either. There's been times when, by all accounts, he has been breaking the rules. There's times when members in the Welsh Senate Parliament have been breaking the rules. Just like in the Scottish and in the Northern Irish. There isn't one politician who hasn't broken, a set of politicians who haven't broken the rules at some point. The problem is that we're all broken souls. We all go out and break the rules. We all test those rules to the limit. You know, how many of you went more than 5 miles from your house during the lockdown? How many of you, when you were meant to be walking for your daily exercise, actually drove about 30 miles to the beach just to take your daily walk? So, we've all tested the limit of the rules. But we weren't the ones making those rules. So, can you blame those people who were fined? Who went through the criminal justice system? Who were given fixed penalty notices? Told to disperse? Some people were meeting friends for mental health. I know I was. Some people were talking in the garden to their neighbours. Now, could that be construed as a crowd of people if four neighbours gather in the garden, in their individual gardens at the time? See, this is where it didn't make sense. But, again, these people weren't the ones making the rules. The people making the rules understand what the rules mean. Because once again, they're making them. In a society where you're trying to level up, and what you're really saying is one rule for you and another rule for me, isn't really, you know, leveling up. But it's more like, well, haha. Do you remember Captain Tom? Or Sir Tom? Do you remember him walking up and down in those, in lockdown? Do you remember his 100th birthday? I'm sure there was a lot of people he would have wanted to have seen and would have wanted to see him when he turned 100. But he chose to follow the rules. And when he did meet people, they were socially distanced. That's leadership. We've seen it again with the Queen. It seems to me that our moral compass has got a little jaded from the world, from where we should be. But it also seems to me that life in general is returning. Did it really stop? Did we just adapt? Many questions there, right? And I'm losing the track of my thought now because I'm contemplating as I do it. And that's my problem. I love to reflect. Normally I'm reflecting on scripture and not Boris Johnson's premiership or Sir Keir Starmer's lack of leadership within the Labour Party. And please do not get me started on Nicola Sturgeon and how she looks a bit like Jimmy Cranky. And before I knew who Nicola Sturgeon was, I didn't even know what the Jimmy Cranky was. Or the other way round. One or the other. I can't. Oh yes, I remember. I used to watch Jimmy Cranky when I was a kid. That's how I knew it was bedtime or something. What's also come out is that from the Manchester Arena bombing, that stewards would now receive counter-terrorism training on their mobile phones. Inquiry has heard, or were hearing. Now, we also see that prices of heating is going up, and again, is that really leveling up? We've sold off. It's, but the cost of living is going up. But wages and benefits and stuff like that are staying the same. Does that actually make sense to you? Because it really doesn't make sense to me. It really crux to the matter. For many of you know that I help out feeding vulnerable and homeless people in my city. I get a great sense of joy. I get a great sense of serving my community. And on top of it all, I get a great sense of serving my God. Knowing that's what I was called to do for those couple of hours. I get a great sense of knowing that we have fed every week since July 2020. There has been people there, within that church, within that room, on a Wednesday, between 9 in the morning and about 12, 1, sometimes 3 in the afternoon, feeding our vulnerable and homeless. These people are immensely rich people, and I'm so glad that they're in my life. The people that I work with on this project are the best. Some of them there are disagreements, but all of them are there to try and feed people, give them food. I've seen an increase during the pandemic of people using this service. This service was originally created in 2019. I remember going to the first week, and I believe I've talked about it. There were 15 people. If we jump to 2022, to this week, Wednesday just gone, we fed over 120 people again for the third consecutive week. We are seeing increases. We are now in triple digits. We have in all nearly fed 7,000 people. It goes up, and it keeps coming. And all that we can do from all of this, from what I see, from the lack of leadership, the lack of care, lack of money, the lack of life in general, is to be hopeful, to be joyful, to help one another. And I'm going to quote from St. David: do the small things. So go and help your neighbour. You know, we learnt this during the lockdown. Those in Downing Street, those in the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, those politicians who are making the rules, those civil servants who are assisting the politicians in making the rules, They may have made the rules, and they may have broke them. But you were the people out there who were going to feed vulnerable people. You were the people out there who were nurses, doctors, fire officers, police officers, paramedics, shop workers, teachers, priests, funeral directors, and a lot more, who kept this country going. And you deserve so much more than what's been offered to you. And we, as a world, even as a country, owe you so much. And for me, I say a prayer for every key worker. Every time I pray for you, I am at a Eucharist service. Every time I say my morning prayers. And even my evening prayers. Because you people are truly, for me, what the Christian faith is. The people of God coming together to worship God for our life and our acts, and showing each other and helping each other and coming along together. Yeah, we have a hierarchical structure, we have our political entities, but we're all just one. This episode, this podcast even, is called Around the World Today. We are one world. Real Terrier's mission is making the world a smaller place. So, I'll leave you with those thoughts. You've been listening to Around the World Today. It's January 2022. With me, Terry D. This was episode 2 of series 5, and I will speak to you on Wednesday. And thank you for tuning in.
Around the world on the internet, this is Real Terrio Radio.
Around the world on the internet, this is Real Terrio Radio.
Making the world a